What's up, everybody? This is Matt Brown with another IoT hacking video. Today we have the Totolink Wi-Fi router. This is a really cheap Wi-Fi router, so let's take it over to the workbench and get started hacking this device. All right, so I've got this router over here that I acquired while I was overseas in Southeast Asia, and so you'll see some signs of that on the device. And by far my favorite part of the device here is, if you can read it, it says warranty void if removed. So we're gonna just go ahead and oh no, oh no, there goes the warranty. It's gone. What are we gonna do without a warranty on this like $15 Wi-Fi router? I don't know. All right, so I have already removed the screws. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 screws on the bottom there, and we're just gonna use our pry tool, pry this guy open, and see what's on the inside. So this is a pretty simple looking router here, and what you would expect with a router like this is for debug ports to be clearly labeled, which is nice. We're actually gonna flip over to the microscope here and get a closer look here, and let's get it into focus. There we go, and you can see that these pins are populated here and very clearly labeled, which is nice for our UART interface. And then what we might look at in a future video, right here we have what is clearly the SPI flash chip here. But today in this video we're just going to target trying to get a root shell on this device over UART. And so here I don't even have to probe around with my multimeter, because clearly labeled are the ground, RX, and TX lines, and then even the voltage is indicating that it's going to be, you know, your standard 3.3 volt UART connection. And so we're going to just use a very simple cable to connect up to this. So let's go back to our desk cam. I have my cable right here, all prepped and ready to go. So on the other end is USB, and then this is the 3.3 volt UART interface that we have wired up. And again, like we've talked about in recent videos, we really only need ground and then TX and RX. Don't need voltage and don't need any of the like clock signals or any other weird stuff that are available on this cable. And so we're going to go ahead and connect those up. We're always going to remember to connect the TX on the cable side to the RX on the board, and vice versa. So I've got those 3 wires connected, and then I'm going to prep the power cord here. I'm actually going to, I'm going to plug it in, and I'm going to have the power button pressed in, but I've got a power strip on my desk a little bit outside of the camera's view, where I'll turn that on when I'm ready to do so. All right, now let's go over to our screen and get ready to open our UART interface on our computer. So what we're going to do is we're going to use PicoCom. It is a terminal emulator, and then by default we're going to select 115.200 as the baud rate. That is the most common baud rate that you will see on these Linux embedded devices out there, but there are exceptions. So, and then we're going to be connecting to that UART cable, which on my computer is going to show up as dev TTY USB 0. Your mileage may vary. And so we're going to run that program. And now I'm going to go and flip on this UART interface, and I'm going to see that I probably don't have that baud rate correct. You know, most of the time, 95% of the time, guessing that baud rate is going to get you what you need. So the nice thing about PicoCom or Minicom and all those similar emulators is in the menu system itself, it has a way to toggle between all the common baud rates. And so the way to do that is, I believe it's Control A, Control H. That brings up the help menu. And then you can see here that there's these different options to increase the baud rate up or down. And those are going to pick the common baud rates in those two directions. And so I'm going to guess that it's lower than what we have it set. So I'm going to hit on my keyboard Control A and then Control D, and then you can see it selects this is the baud rate here, and now we see ASCII data that makes sense on the terminal. And so now we have selected the correct baud rate. So now that we have the right baud rate, we're going to get one clean boot up of this device to see what's really going on. So I'm going to turn it off and on again. When we do that, we're just going to call out some of the things I see. I see U-boot. I see that it's prompting. Potentially, we can interrupt this bootloader and get into some kind of a menu. But for my first boot up of a Linux device like this, I just don't want to touch it. I want to see what it does. And it's going to give me some really interesting information. I'm actually going to scroll up on one of these things here. This is always super helpful, where it's going to show you a partition table when the device boots up. This is really helpful later when maybe we want to target data in a very specific partition on the system. And you can even see that they're nicely labeled. And so we can see, for instance, the root file system is on the partition 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or if this is labeled 0, it'd be 5. You get the picture. So and then it goes down, and then I just hit enter, and you can see eventually we get prompted for, a login, and we can't quite get in. But I want to scroll up, and there's another thing that happens in this boot process that is really important and is specific to certain types of embedded systems. So let's go and find what I'm looking for. All right, here it is. So we see this printed out. It says press the F key and hit enter to enter failsafe mode. So if you have worked with OpenWRT systems in the past, and especially on the UART interface like this, you will recognize that this is a telltale sign that we have OpenWRT. And it has a failsafe mode, right? And because OpenWRT is meant to be a hobbyist, a open source solution for taking a proprietary Wi-Fi router and putting open source technology on that hardware. And often when you're doing that, you're going to put the device into a state where it's unrecoverable. And so this failsafe mode is a way to get yourself back to a working root shell to hopefully be able to debug whatever problem. Well, on a production device, this is generally not a good idea to leave failsafe mode running. And so we can use this to enter into a root shell. So once again, we're going to turn it off and on again. And here we don't have to hit anything really quick, not as fast as we would, because we have to wait for the bootloader to pass first. And then we're going to wait until we're prompted to hit that F and enter. I'm just going to be ready for it. And so, again, so we have bootloader, kernel, and then it's going to pause. Here we go. And now we're into a root shell, but we're not really into a full working root shell, right? Because this is entering a failsafe mode where it's not booting any of the normal router functionality of this device. This is purely a debug shell that lets you, potentially mount file systems, which is what we're going to do, and fix things. So what we can do is we can look, right? Because again, it prints out this partition table, which is very nice, right? So we have all bootloader, config, factory, firmware, root file system. Now the root file system, it might already be mounted. So let's go ahead and see if that is the case. It is! So yeah, so that root file system, which is most likely a read-only squashfs root file system, is mounted. There's no read-write. I suspect that there is another partition that was mentioned. Oh, here. So this root fs data, that is the telltale sign to me that that is probably not squashfs, because squashfs, as we know, is by design a read-only file system. You cannot remount it as being writable with that write permission enabled. So I'm guessing this is something like a JFFS2 or some other file system, UBIFS, that is writable, and so that's where that, as well as custom info, that just has a telltale sign. But what we saw here is when we cat etc shadow, we got a password hash. So there's lots of different ways that we can deal with password hashes and cracking them. But I had an old friend one time tell me the best and fastest way to crack a password hash is to Google it. Because if somebody else has cracked it and has like written a blog post about it, then why waste time running Hashcat or something like that when you can just Google the password hash, or in this case, we're going to use DuckDuckGo, and we find right away that somebody has already actually popped this exact device, I believe, or something in this family of devices, let's just say. And so here we can see, if we scroll down a little bit, that the password that they were able to crack, this same exact password hash, it was CS 2012. And so, again, you get kind of those passwords where the date, maybe, of the devices when it was manufactured gets to be some part of the root password. And so now again, this root shell here is really not the full root shell. And we'll prove that by running the mount command. And we don't see any of those writable actually the writable partition. And we'll show when we reboot that we actually have access to all the partitions. So now what we're going to do is we're going to reboot one more time. Now that we have the root password in hand after cracking it, and we have to wait for this very slow bootloader to go past this menu. Yeah, so here you can see it is actually, like, the bootloader is actually like prompting you to say, hey, if you want to enter into the bootloader menu, you just have to hit 4 and then drop into it. All right, so now we will wait for the system to boot up. There we go, root, paste our password, and we're in. All right, yeah, it's gonna print out a whole bunch of junk. But now we can see when we run mount that here, where is it? Yeah, so here we can see this JFFS2 file system right here. So it's the overlay. And so we can go in there and look at all of the data that is writable, that is unique to this system. So any system unique information is going to end up in that writable partition as opposed to the read-only partition. So this is a first step in our journey of hacking this device. So now we have a full working root shell, which is always helpful to debug exploits and understand what networks services are running on the device, maybe understand the communications that are going out from the device to the cloud server. So thank you for watching this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and have a good day.